Good evening. My name is Wes Shaw. This is my third and final lecture discussion for Exam 3. So in other words, it's my final discussion for the course. And this is going to be my 3 questions for audio responses for the exam. So starting off with our first one, what are 3 major takeaways from this course, which is NRM 1300, and discuss your favorite activities and assignments. So for me, my 3 biggest takeaways are that our land can be rebuilt regardless of the impacts that humans could have made. We have to be conscientious, of course, of what we're doing to the land, and this is not something that's easily fixed over time. So starting off with we can rebuild our land. Earlier in the year, we talked about the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone National Park, and now it rebuilt that ecosystem by the wolves coming in and cutting down on the numbers of elk and of other species in the national park. Without the reintroduction of wolves in the park, I don't think we would be able to see as successful of an interaction within the park. We've seen, as we discussed in class, this is also one of my favorite assignments / activities / topics that we talked about this year. But scientists on Yellowstone were able to see, yes, the reintroduction of wolves has benefited us in numerous ways, whether it be streams being redirected into their original paths, new flora and fauna that used to be in the park coming back to the park after decades of it not being there. You're able to see this development of a society and an ecosystem that comes back. And I think that's really impactful. Second off, this isn't easy. This is not an easy industry to get into. Agriculture and natural resource management are something that have been intertwined. And it's very impactful to see, this is where we are able to grow our society. We're able to become better individuals and be more knowledgeable on the things that are facing our next generations as we come into a potentially, as we've discussed in class, the next era of extinction, essentially. The next mass extinction, whether it be as during the ice ages or anything like that. We've discussed that this is a possibility that we're coming into this next extinction phase. And so I think we have to consider that as well, that, this isn't easy what we've done, what we've been able to build. And I know I said something else earlier, but I think something that's honestly an even bigger takeaway is what my role can be in the future. Coming from a 5th-generation agriculturalist background in the Texas Panhandle, I understand what it takes to keep the earth and the world around us alive. I find that in my everyday life, I'm considering how my choices will affect the future for not only myself, but also my future children. And I think that's something that my dad and I talk about, and my granddad and I talk about quite a bit, is what can we do to make this better, not only for ourselves economically, but also for what's living and native on this land. We weren't the first ones here. Nobody was. It was nature that was here first. So just being able to keep that balance and that equilibrium in an ecosystem while also still being productive in an agricultural sense, growing up on the cattle ranch, we want for our grasses to be the best of the best. And so just finding that balance. This kind of goes into my final activity that I thoroughly enjoyed this semester, but that was the day that we got outside with the chalk. Going out and seeing how society works and how, urban sprawl is going to happen. It's going to infringe on these agricultural spaces just like it is today. And I find that that's something really impactful and something that people in agriculture are aware of, but it's good to see the diversity of a class like this be able to come together and realize, hey, this is happening now. What should we do about it? Because if this land isn't being used for production, then it's a waste of our time. So, Next up, how did the domestication of plants and animals transform the relationship between humans and their environment? consider both positive and negative effects, such as increased food security versus environmental degradation. So the domestication of plants and animals pretty much launched civilization into the stratosphere. Without this establishment of a system where we're able to produce our own food and grow our own food, we wouldn't be here today. American society wouldn't be how it is. Yes, we do have increased food security, but that's not something that's seen around the world. We as Americans are extremely fortunate in the Western world. However, globally, that's not the case. There are still many groups of people in Africa and in Africa specifically that still do kind of the hunter-gatherer mentality. They don't know where their next meal is going to be from, so they have to go out and find it. And it's something that we have to be thankful for, I think, here in the U.S. And also, kind of going on the flip side, we have degraded our environment. We've seen a collapse in tropical rainforests. Our coral reefs are dying off. We have to consider how, with each advancement, that we're also, this isn't a word, I'm sure, but unadvancing society as a whole. And so I think that's really important to know and consider when thinking about that. And then finally, analyze the role of infectious diseases in shaping the trajectory of human civilization. So, starting off with the social aspect. Socially, if you think back to, let's say, COVID-19, and we draw a parallel with it with the plague, you see this massive social shift back towards being more sanitary, being able to find new ways to clean ourselves, be more cleanly, things like that. Politically, it causes political schisms across the world. If you think about it, during the Black Death, they were all blaming, the Black Death was originally blamed on Jewish people. Similar cases like that in past situations, but the Jewish people were blamed for the introduction of it into Europe because they were an easy target group. Here politically in the U.S., many people blamed people of Asian lineage because of the origins of the disease. And so I think that's something that it was also a very polarized issue between both of the major political parties here in the United States. And so you can see those political effects here in the U.S. And then economically, you see a massive dip in economies anytime. COVID-19, we saw record low, record low cost on goods being sold, but in the markets and in your everyday life and aspects, you see an increase in those prices. So I think that's something you also have to consider. And then also with that, it does lead to the rise and fall of an empire. If you think back to it, the Black Death, it was at the height of the Roman Empire and at the Holy Roman Empire, and you started to see that decline in Catholicism across Europe, and you started to see more Protestants, so you could see more religious and political effects. And I think it did affect human history in the long run, because you see more splintering off of kingdoms and things like that away from Catholicism, such as the UK. Right after the Black Death and the Black Plague and all of that, you saw the Church of England form in a Protestant denomination under King Henry and completely split away from the Catholic likeness of the Pope and the Cardinal. And then you see that starting to shift across Europe with more Protestant kingdoms not in Greece. They were Orthodox, though. So your Greek and Russian kingdoms and Polish kingdoms becoming more Orthodox and Protestant-based, along with the Germanic kingdoms. So, yeah, you can definitely see how disease can cause this massive domino effect across the board. And, yeah, definitely be able to pull changes across the board. So, that's it. Thanks for a great semester.